The meeting of the Education and Pupil Services Committee will please come to order. Roll call, Board Secretary, Mr. Rogers, please.
Dr. Haig.
Present.
Mr. Desnoyers.
Present.
Mr. Neal.
Present.
Mr. Warsavage.
Present.
Ms. Murphy Mercy.
Present.
Ms. Williams.
Present.
Ms. Mitchell.
Present.
Mr. Fields.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. The district posted this evening's agenda to board docs at least 24 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting. Is there a motion to approve that previously posted agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to offer?
There are none.
No, Board President Brown.
None? Okay. The agenda has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by saying I oppose and state your name for the record. Those abstaining, please signify by saying I abstain and state your name for the record. The motion carried. I will now turn over the Education and Pupil Services Committee agenda to Co-Chair Director Neal.
Thank you, President Brown. Dr. Kelly or Mr. Marshallak, could you please begin with an overview of your agenda items for this evening?
The first agenda item is informational. It's the 24 through 27 comprehensive plan, followed by the 2023 district review of staffing and student achievement, which again is informational, followed by policies, which would require a board action to move forward for a second reading at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Could you proceed to item agenda number 1, the comprehensive plan?
Absolutely. So the first item is the district comprehensive plan, and we're ready to embark on this next phase of writing the new plan, which is covering the 24 through 27 school years. So a quick review of the agenda. I want to review what goes into writing the Future Ready comprehensive plan. This is the second time that we will use the new Future Ready tool. Followed by the timeline and what we will accomplish or to meet the deadline established by PDE, and then we'll review how to become a steering member and submit an application to become part of the team to write the comprehensive plan. So the first phase of this is to review this tool. So last time we wrote the plan that covered the 21 through 24 school years, which is ready to expire, there was a new Future Ready comprehensive tool. We will use that same tool to develop this plan, which will be a 3-year plan, which will allow us to develop long-term goals and plan action steps and how we are going to reach those goals. We also have a piece of that will have yearly progress monitoring. Same process that we use this time through this plan, the 21-24 plan. This plan will use that same process, develop the goals, plan for the action steps, and then how are we reaching those goals yearly. The team will focus on, in our planning session, the 9 characteristics as outlined by PDE, and I have them shared right here. So our shared focus: developing high standards and expectation, effective leadership, collaboration and communication, curriculum and instruction, and how it aligns to our standards, and then the monitoring of teaching and learning. A big piece of the plan is the professional development plan, or Act 48 part of the plan, and that's where the steering committee really comes into play with developing that piece of the plan. Also talks about the learning environment and how that is established. And then another piece of developing the plan is the level of community and parent involvement. And part of the steering committee involves bringing in community members and parents into this process. The timeline that we will follow, of course, tonight being this comprehensive plan presentation. We then will ask for applications for the steering committee. So, and I'll get into that in the next slide. After that, the board will have to appoint certain members to this steering committee, and I will review those members. But again, it will be the community members, business members, and parents. After that, the work will begin after the appointment of those people in January, and that would be at a board meeting. The meetings would take place weekly from January through February so that we could start a 28-day review, because the whole process or the whole plan itself has to be reviewed and be public, or be available to the public, excuse me, so that people can start to provide feedback to us. After that, we will gather that feedback, make any adjustments, and submit the plan through the Future Ready tool by March 31st. I want to just back up one step. That March 19th date is a big date because that's usually a committee meeting. It will be a committee meeting, but we will also ask that it is a special voting meeting so that we can get board approval to post the plan, have it approved, and then submit it all through the Future Ready tool. So I want to transition into getting to that steering committee, and then I'll back up again if I have to the timeline, just so I can make it clear for everyone. So part of the comprehensive steering committee is to develop a team of people, and where the arrow is pointing where it says Act 48, the committee must have these members as part of the team that is reviewing those 9 things that I just spoke about. Those 9 pieces, or these people that are on the team must be appointed or chosen by select members. So you'll see teachers are chosen by the teachers. So I'm working right now with the union in making sure that I have elementary, middle, and high school teachers on this team. Also, educational specialists. They have to be chosen by our educational specialists. So again, I'm working with the union to make sure I have representation from those 2 groups of people. The administrative representatives are chosen by the administrative personnel. We usually send out an email after this presentation and ask for volunteers who would like to be part of the plan, and then we decide what members of that team we would need on our team. The big piece here and for this presentation is to think about the parents of the children attending the schools in the LEA or in our district, the local business representatives, and the community members. They're all appointed by the school board of directors. So we ask for a resume, we ask for a letter of interest, and then you review those and decide who we would need on or who you would like to have as part of the steering committee. In all of this, and through our training, Mr. Marshallak and I, it is that the teams are divided equally, or that they're balanced. So if we have 2 parents, two parents, then we need 2 local business members, and we need 2 community representatives. So they try to keep the teams balanced throughout this whole process, and that is part of the requirements for this steering committee. So to apply for the steering committee, we have an email set up that applications can be sent. So it is a letter of interest indicating your role as a parent, business, or business representative or community member, along with a resume that is sent to this email address. And the application or the deadline to apply would be December 15th. What that would allow is plenty of time to review the applications for the board and then to vote on the applicants by the January 9th board meeting. So we can start the process and those meetings shortly after that, beginning in January through the end of February, to meet all the other deadlines. So I'm going to back up to the deadline slide just because that's maybe where we would have some questions. But again, just to review, so the applicants would have to apply by December 15th to that email address with those pieces that I just spoke about, the resume, the letter of interest, and what they would be applying to be part of that team as a parent, a business member, or a community member. And then by January 9th to appoint the members to that steering committee. So I'm going to pause here and ask for any questions on this presentation.
A great presentation. I just had 2 quick questions. First one is, what's the administration's plan for outreach to prospective members of the committee who are going to apply to be on it, like who might not be attached or on the daily roles of district communication, but would have a vested interest in participating? And my second question is, I know in the past that when a comprehensive plan committee has been put together, life happens, and sometimes members have to drop out or they aren't able to participate the whole way through. So what's the administration's plan of kind of keeping that team together as whole as possible, because I'm sure you wouldn't want to miss out on the true nature of the comprehensive plan by having those stakeholders and those interest groups being represented.
So me and Mr. Marshall did speak about that because last year, or last time we did the plan, you'll remember that COVID kind of hit in the middle, and then we had to reconvene the whole team. So we did discuss maybe meetings every other time, making them virtual, breaking them up into smaller groups so that we could get feedback from people and that it could be a little bit more flexible. Also, we know that, life does happen, so we're going to just keep constant communication. We've set up, last time we set up a Google Drive so that they could drop in their info, if they weren't able to attend, that they could drop in their comments in a section. So the main section that we have to worry about is that Act 48 or that professional development section, so that everybody would be able to review the section and offer feedback if they aren't able to get to the meeting. But it's just going to be constant communication for us and making it as flexible as possible to have people stay on the team. Really. The other piece is communication. We will send out we will post on our website like we normally do, but we will also be sending out communication with Aranda's help or Mrs. Buford's help to everyone about this process coming up and how to apply and everything out after this presentation tonight.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I just want to say it's been an honor to participate every time, and I hope to be able to at least drop into a few of the meetings. I do see you're holding them weekly. I think that is going to go a long way to help parents sort of get it, like whoever, and the community members and business owners, to sort of get it on their schedule for those. Is it like a 6-week window? So I think that will help instead of, I know sometimes we've done it like every 2 weeks or every third week. So I think that may help a condensed, so that they sort of know it's only for these 6 weeks. And yeah, so thank you.
Any other board members? All right, thank you, Dr. Kelly. That concludes agenda number 1, correct?
Yes, that
Okay,
is
could you
correct.
continue to agenda number 2?
Absolutely. So for agenda item number 2, I am joined this evening by Dr. Council, Dr. Manfrey, and Mrs. Simone for this presentation. And before reviewing the agenda, I want to begin by sharing how complex the analysis of this data has become for districts, and in Upper Darby, how the number of variables increase the complexity of our analysis. Some of the variables that we have to consider and think about when we're looking at the data is the transiency of our schools, the shortage of staff, and the staff turnover. The data we will present tonight was taken from multiple data sources, which allows for this level of analysis and guides our discussion and planning for teaching and learning. So tonight, our presentation will include an overview of staffing at the district level, as well as the state and national levels. The curriculum and instruction team here, Dr. Manfrey and Mrs. Simone, will then review the state and the district achievement levels, district trends by examining cohorts of students, and then I will finish up with an analysis of standards and action steps in the tested subject areas of ELA, math, and science. So at this time, I'd like to pass the presentation to Dr. Council, who will present an update on staffing at various levels.
Take the mic. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Members of the board, President Brown, good evening. As a part of our annual review, we assess the staffing requirements as they relate to several factors. Those factors include attrition, curriculum changes, federal and state mandates, building changes, and other specific concerns that may arise throughout the year. Over the past several years, we've had to really concentrate our focus. We've really concentrated our focus on 5 crucial factors. One is our student population, which represents 12,500 students. Additionally, we have observed a surge in the number of students in our special education programs, which currently stands at 2,332 students, an increase in our autistic support programs, which currently stands at 244 supplemental and itinerant students, and a rise in our EL program, which we are currently serving 2,017 students. We're also focused on fulfilling the Chapter 4 state requirements, graduation requirements, which obviously necessitates staffing to cover all mandatory courses for our high school students. And those courses are listed there on the slide: 3 science courses, 3 social studies courses, 3 math courses, 4 English courses, a physical education and health course, 2 humanities, and 5 elective courses. Take a look at the information here on this slide, on slide number 5. As I transition from one slide to the other, from 4 to 5, I wanted to highlight how the needs of our student population influences our need for staffing. First, we're obligated to meet Chapter 4 requirements, as I just mentioned in the previous slide, as much as possible in the general education classroom with certified teachers. As the needs of our students' population changes from year to year, not including the transient nature of the district, which we will cover a little later, the special certifications and qualifications of teachers increases. So we have teachers who have to cover core content and curriculum, as well as teachers who are required to meet the needs of students beyond the Tier 1 level. In this slide right here that you're looking at, it's just a snapshot in time of the number of students who need support beyond the Tier 1 level. Please keep in mind that we are seeing an increase in our EL population and special education population and what is considered hard to fill jobs, areas at 200 more students a year in our EL and at least 15 students a year in our autistic support program. All of these students are required to complete state testing and meet local and state graduation requirements. In order for us to move more students back into the Tier 1 level, we need more highly trained staff who are qualified to provide reading, math, and behavioral support. You might ask the question, and I want to answer it in advance, why does this matter, right? The next slides that I will present to you, they demonstrate the lack of qualified teachers in the Commonwealth. In order for achievement to increase, we need this profession, the teaching profession, to be more valued and supported beyond the support that's provided here at our district and obviously from you, from the school board. Take a look at the data on this slide here. Over the course of the last 15 years, enrollment in our EL program has experienced a remarkable surge. In 2007-2008, our student population numbered just over 500 students. But as of the current 23-24 academic year, that figure stands at approximately 2,000 students. With such a dramatic rise in student numbers, finding qualified EL teachers to serve the educational needs have become increasingly challenging. As such, it's imperative that we recruit EL teachers to ensure that we continue to deliver the quality of education, the high quality of education that our students deserve. But the numbers here on this slide are staggering, so I just wanted to pause on that for a minute so you can see the difference or the numbers within the past 15 years and the increase in students into the program. The number of students receiving supplemental autistic support has significantly increased as well over the past 11 years. In the 2012-2013 school year, we had 30 students receiving supplemental autistic support, while in the current year, in the 22-23 school year, the number has increased to 176 students receiving supplemental autistic support based on a December 1 snapshot from the Pennsylvania, out of our PIM system. That's the Pennsylvania Information Management System. To date, we do have 205 in-district supplemental support students. We are projecting that the numbers will continue to rise consistently based on the increases we have experienced over the past several years. Due to this steady increase, again, it has become necessary to increase the staffing of autistic support teachers. However, finding such teachers, once again, I just want to remind you, has become increasingly difficult. If you take a look at the table in front of you, this table presents annual figures for professional employee new hire totals here in the district. Over the past 3 years, from July 1st through November 21st, again, this is a snapshot of where we are pretty much today. We see that new hires have steadily increased from 92 to 123 to 144. New hire data throughout the school year from July 1st to June 30th shows a steady increase as well. We hired 134 professional employees in the 21-22 school year. We hired 169 employees, new professional employees in the 22 and 23 school year. Based on the data from previous years, as well as we take a look at the state and the national trends, we're projecting to hire 186 new professional employees by June 30th of 2024. It's been widely reported that the education programs in Pennsylvania, they've produced a historically low number of certified teachers for the 21-22 school year. Only 4,220 graduates of teacher prep programs in Pennsylvania received state teaching certificates, with a total of 5,101 new teacher licenses issued when out-of-state graduates are taken into account. That's the 881 plus the in-state instructional certificates. This represents a significant decline, as we have discussed on many occasions, from a peak of over 16,000 certifications earned in 2012-2013. According to the most recent study by Penn State's Center for Education Evaluation and Policy Analysis, there's been a more than 60% decrease in teaching certificates since 2010. So you can see the staggering number of, as we look at certificates issued by the state over the past 10 years. It's also been observed that the number of emergency certified teachers is on the rise in the state. During my presentation earlier this year, I think it was in February, I highlighted the number of emergency certified teachers who do not have full credentials, that surpassed that of certified teachers for the first time. This trend has continued in 2022, where the number of new teachers without full credentials have exceeded the number of newly licensed teachers. In Upper Darby, here in our district, the number of emergency certificates have grown from 33 last school year to 57 so far this year. I just want to remind you, obviously, that number will increase as we go throughout the year. This trend, just looking at the data itself, this increase in emergency certified teachers is worrisome. It's a worrying trend, as what the data is showing that many of emergency certified teachers, they don't remain in the profession for long periods of time. And obviously in our district and any other district, that leads to a higher turnover rate and what we consider school destabilization. I want to drill down just a little bit further into the professional, the district's professional employee data. We currently serve 979.5 professional employees. Last year, 41 of our professional employees utilized our FMLA benefits, and an additional 39 employees utilized child rearing leave. I also want to note that the areas with the highest number of vacancies coming into the year was special education, math, reading specialists, science, foreign language, and EL. At this time, we have determined that all of our positions are considered hard to fill. We do not have the number of applicants that we've had in the past. Therefore, we look at every position here in the district as a hard to fill position. Currently, if you look at the data right now, we have 7 open positions at our secondary schools, 5 open positions at our elementary schools, and 3 open district-wide positions. I do want to say, however, that thanks to the tremendous work and effort of our administrative team, we have 98% of our professional positions filled. So again, thank you to all the administrators, the supervisors, the principals, the directors for their work in filling these positions throughout the year. I also want to add that the number of teacher absences and substitute requests has decreased over the past 2 years. So you would think that's it is. It's a good thing that the numbers have decreased over the past 2 years. However, with that decrease, the number of available substitutes have also decreased. So we're looking at, on one hand, teacher absences decreasing, but the pool of substitutes have decreased as well. This has led to ongoing daily instructional vacancies. So again, thank you to the administrators, to our principals who are utilizing all the resources they can to help keep the students educated and the classes covered. The number of college students preparing to become teachers is viewed as an indicator not only of the future supply of teachers in the nation, but it's also of the desirability of this profession, of the teaching profession. Data on enrollment and teacher preparation programs have been collected by the U.S. Department of Education, has provided insight into future teacher shortages or surpluses. The next two slides that I want to highlight, or I want to share with you, is going to highlight data that covers enrollment and completion. Taking a look at the slide that's in front of you, we see trends for the past 10 years of how many students enrolled in teacher preparation programs right here in the state of Pennsylvania. The National Council on Teacher Quality data from 2022 is reporting that 19,789 future educators, these are students in the programs, enrolled in teacher prep programs across Pennsylvania during the 2020-2021 school year. The total enrollment in teacher prep programs, that dropped steadily at the beginning of the last decade as shown on this slide. Again, another staggering number as you can take a look at 10 years prior, at 2011, 2012, over 50,000 students were enrolled in programs. Again, this is on the front end. This is just the enrollment. We'll talk about completion in just a second, but 50,000 students enrolled versus less than 20,000 today. Nationally, we look the numbers. Enrollment in teacher preparation programs stands at 70% of what it was earlier. So again, Pennsylvania mirrors the national data. The total number of graduates who completed a teacher preparation program in Pennsylvania has also fallen steadily over the past decade, declining from nearly 12,297 in that academic year of, again, this is the 2010-2011 academic year. The data was collected in 11-12. To 6,213 in the 2010-2011, or 10 years later. So again, the numbers that we're looking at are very staggering. Nationally, graduates who completed teacher prep programs is at 25%, less than what it was 10 years ago. Also, it's important to note that it varies amongst states. I do want to point that out. Enrollment and completion is different in different states. Most of the recovery that we are beginning to see is the result of alternative certification programs. So as we look at the data trying to go in a positive direction, a lot of that can be contributed to these alternative certification programs. The information in the previous slides, the ones that I just presented along with the data below, it really represents the realities that we are currently facing. And I just want to remind you that it's not just here in the district, it's throughout the state, it's throughout the nation. What we're seeing, what the data is telling us is that we're facing that we're looking at over half of the teachers who are saying that they're going to leave the profession a lot sooner than was originally planned. 43% of educator job postings are going unfilled. I mean, can you imagine 43% of them nationally? 30% of teachers were found to be chronically absent. That has a direct impact on the instruction that's taking place in the classroom. We're also looking at teacher turnover rate, which is more than 16% for schools designated for Title I funding. So 16%, again, our numbers are not that high. They're not as high as 16%, but we are used to, I guess, sitting at 8%, 9%. To date, we're probably more at 12, 13%. But again, nationally, what you're seeing, schools designated as Title I schools, their turnover rate is more than 16%. So again, these are the realities that we are experiencing. I do at this time want to turn the presentation over to Dr. Manfrey so he can discuss some student achievement data.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here this evening. The information before you is displayed under Fast Facts on the Future Ready PA Index for every school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This data is based upon the Pennsylvania Information Management System, or PIMS, snapshot on October 1st, 2022. It is important to highlight some statistics on this slide. First, this slide tells us that 67.7% of our students come to us from economically disadvantaged circumstances. The percent of students who are in need of special education services, as Dr. Council alluded to earlier, is about 16% in the October of 2022 snapshot, and the number increases every year, as alluded to earlier in the presentation. Interestingly, in October of 2022, we had approximately 1,600 English learners, which is approximately 13.5% of the overall district population. As I sit here before you, we are at 2,017 English learners, which is 16% of the overall population of Upper Darby School District, matching, and I would bet exceeding soon, the special education population in Upper Darby School District. This number increases. I get a report every Friday. Actually, the curriculum and instruction team gets a report every Friday. This number increases weekly. It's predictable that it increases by 2 or 3 students every week. On the right-hand side of the screen is our district demographic information by race and ethnicity. You should know, interestingly, that Upper Darby High School has 9 out of a possible 11 student groups. No other high school in Delaware County has the number of student groups that Upper Darby High School has. You can go to the next slide. On the screen, you see the average growth for all PA school districts from grades 3 through 12 in ELA literature, math, algebra 1, science, biology. This slide indicates that all students grew an average of 0.4% in the state of Pennsylvania in ELA literature, 2.6% in math, algebra 1, and 4.4% in science, biology. Just take a look at those numbers. And as we move to the next slide, there is some good news in Upper Darby School District, despite the staffing issues discussed by Dr. Council and some of the other roadblocks and barriers that we have as educators in Upper Darby School District. You can see in this slide that 6 schools eclipsed the state percent increase of 0.4% in English literature. 8 schools eclipsed the state percent increase of 2.6 in mathematics, and 6 schools eclipsed the state percent increase of 4.4 in science.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Additionally to the insights shared by Dr. Council and Dr. Manfrey, as we've stated, we have a transient student population that impacts our performance. The data presented here is retrieved from the eMetric Data Warehouse, an assessment reporting and analytics platform empowering informed decision-making. Its interface allows access to review summary data, student subgroups, or focus on individual student strengths and weaknesses. This platform grants secure access to student performance results in state testing and allows us to generate reports, one of which is the cohort comparison report. This report summarizes results for matched cohorts across multiple years and grades. Here's an example of data from a cohort comparison report in ELA and math. In 2019, 881 third grade students were tested in ELA and math. By 2023, when this cohort reached 7th grade, 791 students were tested. Among them, only 502 students were the same students assessed as 7th graders. Also in 2019, 975 4th grade students were tested in ELA and math. By the time this cohort reached 8th grade, 869 students were tested. Of these students, 592 were the same students assessed as 8th graders. This means that 277 students were new students. On average in ELA and math, our cohort of students remaining with us scored between 3 and 4% higher than the total number of students taking the test. In totality, our transient nature influences various facets of our educational framework, affecting instructional planning, professional development initiatives, and the fair and just distribution of resources to ensure equitable access to our support systems and services. So we just wanted to highlight and give insight to what we are dealing with in addition to what has been presented this evening. Dr. Kelly?
So additional analysis comes with looking at the standards and where our areas of strengths are and our areas for growth in all of the tested subject areas, so ELA, math, and science. So in this, and in the next few slides, you'll see trends in the state standards in these tested subject areas. And on this slide in particular, you'll see an analysis of the 2023 PSSA data in mathematics standards. And listed on this slide are the strengths in grades 3 through 5. Note that all of them but one are bolded. So if they are bolded, that means that the strength for the district was also a strength for the state. So you'll be able to see that in this, in these standards right here by grade level. The next slide, this slide shows the same information, but for grades 6 through 8, again in mathematics. So the areas that were a strength for the state were also a strength for the district in all of these standards. So again, what we are doing well on, the state is doing well on also in these tests, in this strand data for the grades 6 through 8. Moving on to the areas for growth in grades 3 through 5, there are some similarities and differences between our results and the state results. Of the standards listed, only the numbers and operations standards are considered major standards and must be an immediate focus for the district. So this is because a major standard in mathematics means that there's subsequent learning that builds on those standards in mathematics. So when we're looking at and analyzing these standards, we really focus on those master standards or the major standards that we need to continue to build on. In grades 6 through 8, again, you will see that there are similarities and differences between the results from the district and results from the state. And in this grade band, the ratios, rates, and proportionality, as well as the expressions and equations, are considered those major standards where we need to focus our work. This is especially important as you get to the middle school level because they build on the Algebra 1 standards that they also are tested on, but that is that foundational course for all higher level math courses as well. On the Algebra 1 Keystone exam, our greatest strength and areas for growth mirror the results of the state. The standards show as areas of growth is the work that begins in those middle school grades as early as 6th grade. So you'll see everything is highlighted or bolded, meaning we are mirroring that. However, this work does go back to 6th grade and continues to build 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and really takes into account those areas for growth being the major standards that I just spoke about for 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, really taking into consideration that areas for growth on Module 1 and Module 2 for the Keystone exam in Algebra 1. This list are the various efforts that are being made to address those areas for growth and to really advance some of the work that we are doing in with our strengths and really providing that solid foundation for our students. Many of the activities listed or the strengths that or the list that of various efforts that we were making is for the content-specific professional development, the alignment of our Tier 2 to high leverage skills and a utilization of our software programs to really help with the deficits that we are experiencing in those major standards. We're going to shift our focus now to ELA. The next two slides show strengths and areas for growth in grades 3 through 8. It is important to note that our students and students across the state are strong in the area of vocabulary acquisition. This is important because vocabulary is critical to developing strong comprehenders and is essential for our ever-rising EL population. The growths, this area is where we need to focus and think of the standards that we have to think about here, those grade 3 standards, where we see that they're not bolded, we're not sharing the same problems with the state, but there are similarities with what we see. The evidence-based analysis of text and the conventions of standard English are work through higher level thinking that we really have to concentrate on for our students. This continues to be an area of focus at the state level in all of our work with the IU and throughout our professional development in the district. This slide represents our Keystone Literature exams, strengths, and areas for growth. All the 10th grade students take the Keystone exam in literature, and they focus on 2 modules, fiction literature and nonfiction literature. Our strengths are in line with the state's strengths. However, you'll see that the anchor descriptors here are not bolded. And since they're not bolded, we need to focus here. And again, this is part of the building blocks that you see in grades 3 through 8 not being bolded as well, where that higher order of thinking is necessary to really analyze the text for meaning. These are our action steps for ELA, similar to what you saw in math. We will continue to focus on professional development in targeted areas. We're targeting learning walks with building level administrators to make sure that we are all looking for the same themes throughout the instruction, as well as partnering with McKay Consulting and really focusing on what our students need to learn and what they are learning, setting their own goals for that learning. We've also partnered with AIM Institute for Reading for our grades K through 2 teachers so that we can develop those building blocks early on as they reach that grade 3. The science portion is a little bit different this year. Science is going through a tremendous amount of shifting right now as we adopted new standards in January. So this portion of the presentation looks a little bit different, but gives a timeline on how this implementation or how the shifts will occur. So in January of 2023, the standards were adopted with full implementation being this year in the in the fall of 24, it will be fully adopted. We've already made the shift to these new standards. In the next spring, the PSSAs, the students will take the first test that is aligned to these new standards that they call STEEL standards. And it's broken down as to what they mean on the top of this slide. It is also that this PSSA would change the grade levels in which it is administered, moving to a grade 5 and grade 8. So currently students take the science exam only in grades 4 and 8. The shift would be to grade 5. This is still pending Chapter 4 approval, but that's on the table for moving it to a grade 5. During the spring of 2025, the test would not be counted for our students or for any students in Pennsylvania, and we'll have field tested items so that the new standards are being tested. By the 25-26 school year, the scores would actually be reported. Again, the shift for science puts a emphasis on scientific problem solving and a foundation based on the science and engineering practices that are described on the screen right here. To make these shifts, we are offering professional development, attending conferences at the IU, and Mrs. Riches, who is in the audience, is also attending state conferences to see how those shifts are best made and how to prepare teachers to make these shifts as well. We've done a lot of instructional coaching and modeling in the classrooms. As you know, we've adopted a new curriculum or new curricular resources in grades K through 5, and then we'll continue to realign the secondary curriculum for the new standards. So I realize that there was a lot of information tonight, and I thank you for your attention. Are there any questions for me or any other member of the team?
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. But first, before I want to break it into two. One, the staffing for Dr. Council, and then we'll move into more of the academic pieces. So any questions for Dr. Council regarding the staffing presentation in the beginning? Director Desnoyers?
You displayed two different pieces of data. One was new teaching certificates issued, and another later on was teacher prep programs completed. And there was the teacher prep programs completed was about 50% higher than new teaching certificates issued. And I'm wondering, does that just mean that some graduates from teacher prep programs don't pursue teaching careers?
That's a great question, but it's absolutely, you just summed it up.
Okay.
You actually answered the question. That's absolutely right. What we're seeing is that those who are graduating from teacher prep programs can go into other professions and, take advantage of, other resources, whether it's financially, being compensated more. Those with math degrees coming out with secondary math degrees obviously can go into the actuary or some other type of profession, science, teachers, and that's what we're seeing that's taking place in the colleges.
Okay, thank you very much.
My question is also for Dr. Council, and it was on slide 13. I think that was one of the slides that Director Desnoyers just alluded to. There was a slight uptick in the teacher preparation programs, went from 5,553 to 6,213. Dr. Council, do you anticipate that? I think you mentioned that it's an uptick, coming out of COVID and recovery and things like that. Do you anticipate it continuing to go up, and do you anticipate us, going up and recovering to like 2013 levels? Do you anticipate it keep going in that direction and going up to get back to where we used to be?
Well, I certainly hope so. My hopes is that, with the support from the state, in terms of funding teacher prep programs, then we will have more interest or more we'll be able to support the students who are in those programs and get them to the completion, get them to receive degrees. So that's just one level of support. Obviously, it's critical what we do here in Upper Darby in terms of supporting our own students throughout the process. Hence why we have those pipeline programs in place to change the image of the profession. It's important that we show not just our students, but our young people that this is a profession that you want to be a part of. And in doing so, if we can just change the image, support our students financially as well as with resources to get them through their college years, and then give them a job on the other side, then we may see an uptick in these numbers. But we won't do that without, again, the help from the state as well as the continued support from our school boards.
If I can add to that, to Board President Brown's question and to John's answer, we're seeing in our relationships with local universities that it is not rebounding anywhere near that it was when some of us started this profession. A couple factors as the cost of education is increasing, and here in Pennsylvania, I'm sure we're aware, some of the more realistically affordable local colleges and universities are collapsing. And so the state educational system in Pennsylvania, not only just our profession, the profession of education, but higher education in the Commonwealth is obviously suffering financially, and local universities that were more financially realistic for kids coming out are collapsing, and those costs are becoming higher. And as a result, the cost of higher education is outpacing significantly salaries for teachers. Also, if you look at the trends in the data, and I said this when I testified most recently at the educational tour in William Penn in November, this isn't new. When you cut education in the like mid 2008, 2009, 2010, people were fearful of going into the profession. They changed certifications, they made it more complicated and harder. And those funding cuts here in Pennsylvania, and I won't name names tonight, but when those funding cuts happened, you'll notice a direct impact in fewer people going into the profession. So if you discredit the jobs, you feel that they can be cut, especially in significant areas, harder areas. People aren't going to the profession, and now the costs have gone so high. At the same time, budgets were cut. Thankfully, here in Upper Darby, it's not the case, but I'm sure some of you who are on this board and teach in other places can maybe attest to the fact that they're not refunding teachers to go and get more degrees. There is not a continuing education program any longer, and that has had a significant impact, I think, on higher education too, where many of these universities were counting on master's degrees or even degrees in education beyond just an undergraduate degree being supported by local school boards and communities to keep that higher interest going has been cut. So there's very few school districts that are refunding students to get their master's degree or their doctorate degree. So by the time you have to earn your level 2 certification by year 3, 4, or 5, you can't afford to pay the costs. And as a result, you're going to shift out of education and go into a higher paying job because you can't keep up and get the certificate demands. So Board President Brown and Board Member Desnoyers, your question is important. It's extremely complicated. We have overcomplicated education. Certificates are very complicated. Getting into and paying for education is a cost, and we're no longer supporting it the way that we once did many, many years ago. And as a result, the tuition costs and the payment for teachers it's not keeping up with the job reality.
Dr. Council, you mentioned that we had 30-something teachers that were on emergency permits last year compared to 57, I think you said, this year?
Correct.
So I just wonder, of those 30-something or last year and the 57 this year, how many actually convert those emergency permits into certifications for the school district?
Sure. Well, this year, I mean, if you look at last year, we have, I would say, about 10 who have followed through with the 3-year commitment. Again, the emergency certification is a 3-year commitment. So we've had about 10 of our employees who have received their certifications. But remember, it's not just those who don't have any credentials. We also have add-ons. Those who may have had a K-4 certification and added on a middle school science certification. So they would be a part of the 10 as well, who were already our current employees. They just maybe added on a different certification. We have a couple of teachers at our high school who went from, I believe it was history, to tech. I believe it was technology. So that was an add-on certificate as well. But we do see here in the district, as long as we continue to support our teachers, that they will continue on, but not all of them.
If I can add to that, Ms. Williams, too, again, the complications we're finding with the emergency certified teachers, a couple buckets, if I can explain that, if you don't mind. Bucket number one, and I shared this with anybody that I go to in this advocacy. If you're an elementary school teacher, you can teach kindergarten through 6th grade. Is that fair to say? And as a teacher, as I know you're a teacher and you've taught at a couple different places, as an elementary school teacher, you could teach math, social studies, science, correct? You could teach those core subjects all the way up until 6th grade. But if you wanted to be a 7th grade science teacher out of an elementary school, you have to go through a similar process to be qualified to teach 7th and 8th grade science as someone who doesn't have a teaching degree at all. So just think about why are we doing it that way? Why, if we have an elementary school certified teacher who could teach some of those, and at least has a degree in teaching, why is it so complicated to allow them to teach 7th or 8th grade and treat them as if they never went to any school of education to get certified to be a teacher? So the teaching certificate program, the emergencies process, is a little baffling. Those teachers also have to go back to school. So at the same time they're learning as an emergency certified teacher, we'll talk about the other bucket. They have a college degree, but they never taught before and don't have a degree. They may even have a degree in the background. In our middle schools, we have several science teachers who do not have a degree in science, who do not have a degree in education, that are emergency certified to be teachers, having to school to get a teaching certificate at 6 courses a year at least. They have to put that money up front, learn how to teach every single day, go to school to get their credits over 3 years, and then take that praxis test. I know that you know this, but I'm saying this for the public. It is extremely cumbersome to get an emergency certified teacher to the finish line when they have to put that money up front, wait for the reimbursement, plan and prep for new classes, and they may have never been a teacher before. And that is concerning. I hope that we will all agree. That's a lot to ask of people on top of doing that during the day, those expectations. And so I think your question's a good one. I think very few people are finishing that process along the way. Another burnout factor happens. Our concern, we keep an eye on this every Monday, is that we're up to 57 now. Well, if only 10 of those, let's say, finish it, we have to find another 47 people at least to fill in that void every single summer. That's increasing. So it's a concern.
Yeah, so, Ms. Williams, if I can, we had 8 employees complete the certification last year. They 8 complete their certification, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that did not meet the criteria.
Got it. And my actual concern was that we said we were going to add more to that pile.
Sure.
Yeah, if we're already at 57. So I'm curious, how many more are we adding by the end of the school year?
Well, thankfully, we're at 98% filled in terms of our professional employees. But our hopes is that going into next year, we will, again, in our contract, we have a criteria that those who want to retire have to submit that information by February 15th. So we're hoping with that information that we could fill those positions a lot earlier and, I guess implement strategies to try to fill these positions. But 57 is an all-time high. Again, over the summer, science was we took a big hit with our science teachers at the middle schools. Again, special ed teachers, special education teachers, math and science pretty much made up our emergency certifications this school year.
But to be directly blunt and answer your question, I think it's only going to go up, unfortunately, because there are not people coming out with a science, math, special education. Our jobs that are open right now are for autistic support, special education, EL teachers, and people are not going to school and coming out certified in those areas. So we have to emergency certify people. High level math courses, science courses at the secondary level. I know that you know this, but for the public, I believe the only way we're going to fill some of those jobs is if we can recruit people from other industries to want to come into this profession. Our hope would be at least to get someone with a degree in that subject area, and that's even becoming more difficult. But I'm concerned, I think that you are too, I'm very worried what the future holds with having emergency certified teachers filling these positions. And that, as John presented, is outpacing people going into the profession.
Okay, so I do have 2 questions. This is also for Dr. Council. So you said that most of the emergency certs were in the areas of need that we have, like science, math, special ed, ELL. The majority of the certs are in those areas?
Yes, special education, science, math, EL.
Okay. The other question I had, it goes back to slide number 8. I see the new hires from year to year. Is there any way to look at the data and see how many of the new hires are actually retained throughout the year?
Yes.
We'll be able to see that sometime?
Sure, of course, we can get those numbers from you. What I hear you asking for is how many second year,
Yes.
third year
Yes.
teachers we have.
Yes.
Yes, I can get those numbers
Okay.
for you.
Thank you.
Any other directors have any questions for Dr. Council? All right, moving on to the next topic, the academics portion of the presentation for Dr. Kelly and the rest of the team.
I just wanted to say I'm proud of the progress we're making, and whatever the board can do to support ongoing progress, bring it on.
All right, thank you.
I just want to comment, there's a lot of work that goes into this. We don't want to shy away from the fact that we believe student achievement is a huge priority in the school district. I hope that you would agree, and I hope the teachers on this panel would agree. There's a lot of, even before this meeting tonight, we had a very healthy debate in my office just about how can we do better and what can we do. I mean, it's our kids are capable of more. So a few weeks ago when I spoke at that meeting, the hearing with the state reps, there's this idea of, and I'm concerned, I'll make sure I express this the right way, of making the teacher licensure more easier. And my concern is that's not the issue for me, at least. The issue is when you don't fund schools properly, and we can show historically what's happened here in Upper Darby without a doubt, right? You're lowering your expectations of each other, So I think, Ms. Williams, if I can read into a little bit your question, if we're saying anybody can be a teacher, we're devaluing the job, in my opinion. You devalue it. And by the way, we're devaluing it so much that we're putting just about anybody who has a college degree in front of children, and it's not that easy to be a teacher. It takes a special person, I believe, to be a teacher. And so we're going in the wrong direction saying that that's okay and celebrating that. I want to be clear. We're not celebrating it. We're literally in survival mode, to be very clear, that we see our schools as having to be open with at least someone with a college degree working with children in the schools every single day. But by admitting to that and accepting that, we're devaluing the fact that the number two issues, you should be paying teachers better. They should be compensated better and treated better. That's number one. Number two, if we lower our expectation for our kids, and it was concerning to hear from some at this hearing the other day that the idea is to lower the standards. All we're telling our kids in our communities is, we don't think you can learn, and we don't think you can do the schoolwork. That's not the message here in Upper Darby. You know, we have 6 to 8 of our, despite some of this doom and gloom of the teacher trends, we're doing an amazing job moving kids. You're talking about 200 EL kids, and we're not even going through the details of maybe we're never in school, or maybe coming from circumstances that had no educational background at all, might not be even literate in their primary language, let alone English. They have to take the state tests, by the way, these students. We're short in EL teachers. We don't want to tell people to lower the standard for kids. That's the wrong message. The message needs to be, put the money into the public schools, because when the schools were funded in Upper Darby under the Rendell administration, and yes, I'm going to say it, when that happened, 96% of the subgroups in the Upper Darby School District were blowing away the standards in the state of Pennsylvania. 96%. That looks like 8 or 9 reading specialists at Bywood, where there are 3 or 4, right? It looks like 4 coaches per school that we only have 12 of now in the whole district. Bywood had 4 coaches in the school itself at one time. So when we had to cut these positions and try to scrounge our way back, and now we're begging anybody basically to try to become a teacher, the achievement's not going to go up. And I would say that we knew this 12, 13 years ago, all of our costs are going to go up. Your insurance costs, your car insurance costs, all those costs go up because there's a direct relationship with valuing kids in education, putting money where it is. So 2 factors: pay our teachers better in this country, because I know our school board is doing it, and fund the schools. And I don't know why it continues to be a debate that the schools are not being funded appropriately here in Pennsylvania. And I think there are 2 issues that we need to really continue to advocate for if we're going to reverse this trend. We don't want to be here next year and have 100 emergency certified teachers. Not that we don't value those people going to the profession, but they're struggling in the classrooms at the same time.
Okay, so I just wanted to add too, for those who may not know, some people may not really believe that there's a national teacher shortage. They think that we just need to do a better job at whatever. But there's a national labor shortage. Like, you can't go to a doctor because doctors have stopped taking patients. Like, there's a national struggle with getting people into fields, especially the difficult fields like education, law enforcement, stuff like that. So I think you just need to watch the news and notice that our country is in a crisis right now with getting people to just work.
Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, seeing none, agenda item number 3 is policies. I believe we have a few first readings. Director Desnoyers.
Thank you. There are changes to 2 policies for consideration this meeting. There have been no changes since the November 14th board meeting, where these policies underwent a first reading. The changes being considered today will need to be moved forward by the board at this meeting and approved at a subsequent board meeting in order to take effect. The 2 policies impacted are 203.1, which was formerly titled HIV infection, and the new title is simply HIV. That's for students, and policy 314.1, which was also formerly titled HIV infection and is now simply titled HIV, and that is for employees. In brief, to summarize changes to both policies, the district policies governing HIV are undergoing district-initiated updates. The updates result in language consistent with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, known as the CDC, HIV-related guidelines, and ensure that, to the extent possible, the district follows CDC guidance on HIV prevention education. Thank you.
Thank you, Director DeSnores, for your summary of policy changes. Were there any questions or comments from the board regarding these policy changes? All right, seeing and hearing none. Dr. Kelly, could you, I'm sorry, the review comes after a public comment. Are there any in-person public comments? All right, seeing none. Are there any online or virtual comments?
No, there are not.
All right, thank you. Dr. Kelly, could you please review tonight's agenda?
Of course. So the first agenda item was the 2024-2027 comprehensive plan. It was an informational item and reviewed the timeline and expectations of how the plan will be developed, as well as how to become a member of the steering committee. The second item was the 2023 district review and the relationship between staffing and student achievement. That, again, was informational, where we highlighted the staffing and student achievement throughout the state and district.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. This concludes all the agenda items. President Brown, I turn the meeting back to you. Yeah. I apologize, President Brown. We don't hear you. I believe we're trying to work on that. If it's okay with you, I'll have Vice President Fields conclude the meeting. All right, thank you. And then we'll have a brief recess.
A motion is order for adjournment of the Education and Pupil Services Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned.